What happens when your best friend becomes your business rival? I'd been running Ember and Thread for almost 4 years when the email landed in my inbox at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, immediate closure, final notice. My primary supplier, Cascade Metals, was shutting down. Bankruptcy. Effective immediately. No forwarding address, no transition plan, just a form letter thanking me for my business and wishing me luck finding another vendor. I sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop screen while my coffee went cold. I had 2 custom orders due that week. A wedding set for a bride in Portland and an anniversary piece for a couple in Denver. Both jobs were worth over $300 each, and I had just enough silver wire and findings in my studio to finish them if I didn't make a single mistake. After that, I had nothing. I opened my order queue. 11 more jobs lined up behind those 2. Deposits already paid, deadlines already promised. I called 3 backup suppliers before 8. 2 had minimum orders I couldn't afford to place until I cleared some of my current backlog. The 3rd didn't carry the gauge I needed for anything on my list. Then I thought of my childhood friend, Iris Calloway. Iris and I had started our Etsy shops within a month of each other. We'd been inseparable growing up. Same art classes in high school, same community college jewelry program, same dream of turning metalwork into something that paid the rent. When she'd opened her shop, Moonstone and Wire, I'd been the one cheering loudest. I'd also been the one teaching her how to solder without melting her bezels. The one covering her supply shortages when she couldn't afford to restock before a craft fair. The one staying up until 2 in the morning finishing her orders when she got overwhelmed during the holidays. 6 months ago, I'd been the one who found her current supplier, Argent Collective, and walked her through the wholesale application process because she didn't think she had enough volume to qualify. She'd gotten approved, her materials cost dropped by 40% overnight, and her shop started turning an actual profit for the first time. I opened our message thread and typed quickly, "Hey, Argent just sent my closure notice. I'm in a bind with materials until I can line up a replacement vendor. Any chance I can piggyback on your next bulk order? Just need enough to get through the next 2 weeks. I'll pay you back the same day it ships." I hit send and went to work on the Portland wedding set. Her reply came in 53 minutes later while I was in the middle of filing a bezel edge. "Hey, that's rough about Cascade. I don't think mixing finances and supply chains is a good idea, though. It would complicate my bookkeeping, and I've been trying to keep everything streamlined. Probably better if we keep our shops completely separate going forward. I'm sure you'll find someone soon. Good luck." I read it 3 times. Then I set my file down and read it again. She'd written it like a business email. Polite, professional, distant. I scrolled up through our message history. There was the night I'd talked her through a panic attack when a customer left her first 1-star review. The afternoon I'd driven across town to deliver jump rings because she'd run out mid-project and didn't have a car. The week I'd covered her booth at a street fair because her kid got sick, and I'd handed her every dollar I made. There was the order I'd finished for her at midnight when she was drowning. The tutorial videos I'd recorded and sent when she couldn't figure out patina techniques. The supplier contact list I'd built over 3 years and shared without asking for anything in return. I looked at the 2 custom pieces on my bench. I had just enough material to finish them if I was careful. After that, I had nothing, and Iris had just told me to keep things separate. I closed the laptop and picked up my file. My hands were shaking, but I kept working. I didn't have time to sit here feeling betrayed. I had orders to finish and a business to save, and apparently I was doing it alone. I finished the Portland set by 10 that night and shipped it the next morning. The Denver piece took another day and a half. I used every scrap of silver I had left, including the practice wire I'd been saving for technique experiments. When I soldered the final clasp closed, I had 4 inches of 20-gauge wire and a handful of mismatched jump rings sitting in my supply drawer. I stared at my empty materials bin for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Iris. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, what's up?" "I got your message," I said. "I just wanted to talk it through. I'm not asking you to front me money or anything complicated. I'd literally just add my materials to your next order and Venmo you the same day. It wouldn't touch your bookkeeping at all." "I hear you," she said. Her voice had that careful, measured tone people use when they've already decided something and they're just waiting for you to accept it. "But I've been reading a lot about business boundaries lately, and every article says the same thing. Successful business owners keep their operations separate. Mixing finances, even in small ways, creates liability and confusion. Iris, I taught you how to solder. I've covered your supply runs. I finished your orders when you were underwater. And I'm grateful for all of that," she said. "But that's exactly why I need to set boundaries now. I don't want our friendship to get messy because we're too entangled professionally. This is about protecting what we have." I sat there holding the phone, trying to find words that made sense. "You're saying no because you want to protect our friendship," I said slowly. "Exactly. By refusing to help me when my supplier shut down and I have 11 orders I can't fill." Silence. "I'm not refusing to help," she said finally. "I'm just saying I can't be your safety net anymore. You need to build your own systems. That's what I did. You built your systems with my help, and now you need to do the same thing on your own. That's called growth." I hung up. My hands were shaking again. I set the phone down and went back to my studio and stared at my empty bench. Then I opened my laptop and started sending messages. I reached out to 3 people in our maker community, people Iris and I both knew from craft fairs and online forums. I kept it factual. Cascade had closed. I was looking for supplier recommendations or short-term material sources while I transitioned. I didn't mention Iris. I didn't explain why I was in a bind or what I'd asked for. I just said I needed help. The first response came back in 20 minutes. It was from Portia Vance, a metalworker who'd been in the scene longer than either of us. "Hey, I heard you and Iris had a falling out. She mentioned you were having trouble letting her run her own business. I'd offer to help, but I don't want to get in the middle of friend drama. Hope you work it out." I read it 4 times. Then I checked my messages with Iris. We hadn't talked to anyone about this. I'd called her once and sent 1 message. That was it. I opened the next reply. It was from a wire sculptor named Colin Brennan, who Iris and I had shared a booth with last summer. "Sorry to hear things got weird between you 2. Iris said you were struggling with her success and trying to pull her back into old patterns. I think it's good she's setting boundaries. You'll both be better off. Good luck finding a supplier, though." I stared at my screen. She'd messaged them first. She'd framed this before I'd even had a chance to ask for help. The 3rd message was shorter. The person just said they couldn't recommend anyone and wished me luck. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark studio for a while. Then I went went to my Etsy dashboard and marked every listing as temporarily unavailable. All 37 of them. The system flagged me immediately with a warning that my shop visibility would tank and my search ranking would reset. I clicked through the warning and confirmed. 3 messages appeared in my inbox within the hour. Repeat customers asking if I was closing permanently, if something was wrong, if they should cancel their custom orders. One of them had been planning a piece for her daughter's graduation in 2 months. Another had been saving up for an anniversary gift and wanted to know if I'd still be around in the fall. I wrote back to each of them. I said I was temporarily closed while I transitioned suppliers, and I'd reopen as soon as I could. I didn't know when that would be. 2 of them said they understood and they'd check back. One of them said she couldn't wait that long and asked for a refund on her deposit. I sent the refund. Then I opened my business checking account and stared at the balance. I had enough to cover rent and utilities for 2 months if I didn't buy materials, didn't eat out, didn't spend money on anything that wasn't survival. If I could find a supplier and restock within 8 weeks, I could reopen and start digging out of the hole. If I couldn't, I'd lose everything I'd built while Iris kept running her shop with the supplier I'd found for her and the techniques I'd taught her. I closed the laptop and went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark running numbers in my head and trying to figure out how to build a business from nothing, when the person who'd learned everything from me had just made sure no one in our community would help. I opened a spreadsheet and started listing every metal supplier I could find. Regional wholesalers, online-only vendors, import companies that sold direct to small businesses. I sent inquiry emails to 14 of them over the next 3 days. The first responses came back with minimum order quantities I couldn't meet. $500 upfront. $1,000. One place required a $2,000 initial purchase and a signed contract for quarterly reorders. I kept going. 4 suppliers got back to me with quotes that didn't have minimums. I pulled up my old invoices from Cascade and compared the numbers. Sterling silver wire, 20 gauge, per foot. Cascade had charged me $1.70. The new quotes ranged from $2.40 to $3.15. Sheet metal, 18 gauge per square inch. Cascade's price was 85 cents. The cheapest new option was $1.30. I ran the math on my most popular listing, a simple sterling cuff with a hammered texture. At Cascade's prices, my material cost per piece was $11.20. My labor and overhead added another $8. I sold them for $35, which gave me a $15 profit after Etsy's fees. At the new supplier's prices, my material cost jumped to $17.40. That dropped my profit to $9.60 per piece, a 40% cut. I could raise my prices to compensate, but my customer base was mostly people buying gifts in the $30 to $50 range. If I pushed my cuffs to $45 or $50, I'd price myself out of my own market. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Then I started looking at alternative metals. Copper was cheaper, brass was cheaper. Nickel silver wasn't actually silver, but it looked close enough and cost half as much. I ordered sample quantities from 3 suppliers, $200 total, which left me with enough in my account to cover rent and not much else. The packages arrived over the next week in padded envelopes that felt too light, like they were mocking me. I set up my torch and started testing. The copper oxidized almost immediately. I tried a protective coating, but it wore off after 2 days of handling and left greenish residue on my test cloth. I looked up hypoallergenic sealants and found ones that cost more per ounce than the copper itself. The brass held up better, but it tarnished within a week even with polish. I made a sample cuff and wore it for 3 days. By day 2, my wrist had a faint greenish line where the metal touched my skin. Nickel silver looked perfect until I started working with it. The alloy was harder than sterling, which meant it fought me on every bend and curve. I annealed a test strip to soften it and got the temperature wrong. The metal warped, buckled, and turned a mottled gray that wouldn't polish out. I tried again with a lower flame and held it too long. The strip started to melt at one edge, sagging like a mistake I couldn't take back. I burned my fingertips on the 3rd attempt when I grabbed the piece too soon after annealing. The blister formed immediately, white and angry across my index finger and thumb. I ran cold water over my hand and stared at the ruined metal on my bench. 6 hours of work, $50 in materials, nothing I could sell. I wrapped my fingers in gauze and went to bed at 4 in the morning. My phone buzzed at 9 with a notification from the craft community forum. Someone had tagged me in a thread. I opened it and saw Iris's name at the top of the post. She'd written a long update about her shop hitting a milestone, her first $1,000 week. She thanked her supplier for consistent quality and fair pricing. She thanked her customers for trusting her work. She thanked herself for pushing through the hard moments and learning to run a real business. The comments filled the space below her post like applause. So proud of you. You've worked so hard for this. Your pieces are gorgeous. You deserve this success. One person wrote, "It's amazing to watch you grow into your own. You're such an inspiration." Iris had replied to that one with a heart emoji and the words, "Thank you. It's been a journey, but I'm finally finding my stride." I scrolled through 37 comments. Not one of them mentioned my name. Not one of them remembered the months I'd spent teaching her bezels and patina and wire wrapping. Not one of them knew I'd been the person who found her the supplier she was thanking. I closed the app and set my phone down. Then I picked it up again and opened my messages. I scrolled to the name of a local jeweler I'd met at a maker fair 2 years ago. Her name was Ruth Calhoun, and she'd been working in precious metals for 20 years before I'd even started. She ran a small studio downtown and had always been generous with advice when I'd asked. I typed carefully, "Hi Ruth, I hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out because my primary supplier closed recently, and I'm struggling to find a replacement that offers competitive rates for small batch orders. Do you have any recommendations for vendors that work with solo shops? I'd really appreciate any guidance you can share." I sent it and waited. Her response came back 4 hours later while I was trying to polish the tarnish off a brass test piece that kept dulling no matter how much I buffed it. "Hi, I'm sorry to hear about your supplier trouble. Unfortunately, most of the premium vendors I work with require established credit lines or minimum order commitments that are pretty steep for a one-person operation. The rates they offer are volume-based, so without consistent bulk orders, you'll probably be looking at retail or near retail pricing. Have you considered partnering with another maker to split large orders? That's how a lot of smaller shops manage the cost. Wishing you the best as you figure this out. I read it twice. Then I looked at my burned fingers, my warped test metals, and the balance in my business account. I'd asked for help from the one person who could have made this easy, and she'd said no. I'd asked my community, and they'd already heard her version. I'd asked a respected professional, and she'd told me I didn't have the volume or credit to access the rates I needed. Every door I tried led back to the same place. I was too small, too new, too alone. I opened Iris's post again and stared at the comments. She was celebrating a milestone built on a foundation I'd helped her pour, and no one in that thread knew it. No one cared. I closed my laptop and sat in my dark studio with my bandaged fingers and my ruined samples, and the quiet, growing certainty that I was going to lose everything while she kept winning. Then I opened my notebook and started writing down every single test that had failed and why. If I couldn't find a better supplier, I'd have to build a better process. The email from Grace Whitfield appeared on a Thursday morning while I was testing a brass wire technique I'd found in an old metalworking manual from the 70s. Hey, I hope you're doing okay. I've been checking your shop every few days to see if you've reopened. I wanted to reach out because I noticed Moonstone and Wire just added some new pieces that look really familiar. Specifically that layered cuff style you used to do with the oxidized finish. I thought maybe you two were collaborating or something. Just wanted to make sure you knew. Sending good thoughts your way. I stopped mid-bend and set my pliers down. I opened Iris's shop page and scrolled through her new listings. The first one was titled Midnight Cascade Cuff. The photo showed a wide sterling silver band with 3 overlapping layers, each one textured and oxidized to create a gradient from dark charcoal to bright silver. The construction was identical to a design I'd developed 18 months ago. I'd called mine Eclipse Series. I'd spent weeks figuring out how to layer the bands without visible solder joints, how to control the oxidation so it faded naturally from one edge to the other. I'd taught Iris that technique 6 months ago when she'd asked how I got my finishes so even. The listing description read, a bold architectural statement piece featuring hand-textured layers and a signature gradient patina. Each cuff is one of a kind, designed to make an impact. I scrolled to the next listing. Constellation Ear Climbers. Delicate wire-wrapped sterling pieces that curved up the ear in a pattern I'd designed for a custom order last winter. I'd posted progress photos in our maker group. Iris had commented on them, asking how I'd shaped the wire to follow the ear's curve without visible support structure. I'd sent her a video tutorial. The third listing was a pendant. Lunar frame necklace. A circular bezel with a moonstone set off center, surrounded by textured silver that looked like it was melting into the stone. I'd made that exact design for a customer 2 years ago, and had been refining it ever since. It was the piece people asked about most when they visited my shop. Iris's description said, a modern take on classic metalwork, blending organic texture with clean lines. This piece has been in development for months, and I'm so excited to finally share it. I closed the laptop. Then I opened it again and checked her prices. The cuff was listed at $75. I'd sold mine for $55. The ear climbers were $60. Mine had been $40. The pendant was $95. I'd priced mine at $70. She was using my designs, my techniques, and charging more because she had access to the supplier I'd found for her. I sat there staring at the screen until the room got dark, and I realized I'd been sitting for 3 hours without moving. I didn't message her. I didn't post about it. I just closed the laptop and went back to my tests. 2 weeks later, I drove to the Riverside Makers Market because I needed to see what other metalsmiths were doing with alternative materials. I wasn't planning to set up a booth. I wasn't even planning to talk to anyone. I just needed to walk through and look at work and remind myself that people were still making things and selling them. I parked near the north entrance and walked into the rows of white canopy tents. Iris's booth was in the 3rd row, right in the center where the foot traffic was heaviest. She'd upgraded her display. New risers, better lighting, a fabric backdrop with her logo printed across it in metallic silver. Her pieces were arranged on black velvet, each one spotlit like it belonged in a gallery. She was wearing one of her new cuffs, the one that looked like mine. She saw me before I could turn around. Oh my gosh, hey! She stepped out from behind her table and walked toward me with her arms open. Her voice carried across the aisle. 3 vendors in nearby booths turned to look. I didn't know you were coming today. How are you? Are you doing okay? She hugged me before I could step back. I'm fine, I said. I've been so worried about you. She pulled back but kept one hand on my arm. Her smile was bright and concerned, the kind of expression people use when they're performing empathy for an audience. Have you found a new supplier yet? When are you reopening? I'm working on it. That's so good to hear. I know how hard it's been for you. She glanced at the vendor to our left, a woodworker who was clearly listening. I keep telling people you just need time to rebuild. Everyone's been asking about you. I'm sure. No, really. People miss your work. I've had at least 5 customers ask me if I know when you're coming back. She squeezed my arm. I've been sending them to your shop page so they can favorite it and get notified when you reopen. I want to make sure you don't lose those connections. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. That's kind of you, I said. Of course, we have to support each other, right? She let go and gestured at her booth. Do you want to see what I've been working on? I just launched a whole new collection. I've been experimenting with some techniques I've been developing, and I think they're finally ready to share. I looked at the cuff on her wrist, the pendant hanging around her neck, the ear climbers on the display behind her. I've seen them, I said. Her smile flickered. Oh, you checked out my shop. What did you think? They look familiar. I was really inspired by some of the work we used to talk about, she said carefully. I think we've both grown a lot as artists. It's cool to see how our styles are evolving in parallel. Right. The woodworker next to us was absolutely listening now. A jewelry maker across the aisle had stopped arranging her display and was watching us with obvious interest. Iris's smile stayed locked in place. Well, I should probably get back to my booth. I've got a customer coming back in a few minutes to pick up a custom order. She touched my shoulder. It's so good to see you. Really. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help, okay? I mean it. I will. I walked away before she could say anything else. I made it to my car and sat in the driver's seat with my hands shaking. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. A message from Colin Brennan, the wire sculptor who'd told me Iris said I was struggling with her success. Hey, I wanted to reach out because I heard some things and I thought you should know. Iris has been telling people your shop was never really sustainable, that you were running on underpriced work and borrowed resources, and that's why you had to close when your supplier shut down. She's saying you built your business on techniques you learned from other people and didn't develop your own voice, so when you lost access to cheap materials, the whole thing fell apart. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought you'd want to know what's being said. It might be worth getting ahead of the narrative before it spreads too far. I read it 4 times. Then I opened the Maker forum and searched for my name. There were 3 threads in the past 2 weeks that mentioned me. One was asking if anyone knew when I'd reopen. The responses were sympathetic but vague. Someone said I was figuring things out. Someone else said I was taking a break to reassess my business model. The second thread was about pricing strategies. Someone had used my old cuff price as an example of unsustainable underpricing. The comment said, "That's why shops like that don't last. You can't build a real business on discount rates and borrowed techniques." Iris had liked the comment. The third thread was in a private group I didn't have access to. I only knew it existed because Colin had included a screenshot in his message. The post was from Iris. It was dated 5 days ago. I've been thinking a lot about boundaries and growth lately. It's hard when you outgrow a friendship that was built on one person being the teacher and the other being the student. At some point, the student has to become their own artist, and that transition can be really painful for the person who's used to being needed. I think a lot of makers struggle with this, letting go of the role of mentor when your friends start succeeding on their own. It's not malicious. It's just hard to watch someone move forward when you're stuck. Anyway, just wanted to share in case anyone else has dealt with this. It's been on my mind. 17 people had liked it. 4 had left supportive comments. I closed my phone and drove home in the dark. When I got back to my studio, I opened my notebook and looked at the pages of failed tests, rejected materials, and dead-end techniques. Then I turned to a blank page and started writing down everything I knew about alternative metal alloys and experimental finishing processes. If she was going to take my designs and my reputation, I'd build something she couldn't copy. I spent Friday night on my couch with my laptop balanced on my knees, scrolling through supplier databases I'd never heard of before. I wasn't looking at jewelry vendors anymore. I was looking at industrial metal suppliers, the kind that sold to factories and manufacturing plants and people who needed 10,000 units of something, not 10. I found a company called Meridian Industrial Alloys at 2 in the morning. Their homepage showed photos of machine parts and architectural fixtures. Their product list included dozens of specialty alloys I'd never worked with. Most of them had minimum orders in the thousands of dollars. One listing didn't. Titanium aluminum alloy, corrosion resistant, hypoallergenic, available in wire and sheet form. Small batch orders accepted for prototyping and development purposes. Minimum order, $50. I clicked through to the technical specifications. The alloy was designed for medical devices and marine hardware. It was lighter than sterling silver. It didn't tarnish. It didn't oxidize. It could be annealed at lower temperatures than traditional jewelry metals, and it held a polish longer than anything I'd ever worked with. The price per foot for wire was 63 cents. I read that number 3 times to make sure I wasn't misreading it. Cascade had charged me $1.70 per foot for sterling. The new jewelry suppliers I'd contacted wanted $2.40 to $3.15. This was 63 cents. I filled out the order form and bought $200 worth of sample materials. Wire in 4 different gauges. Sheet metal in 3 thicknesses, a small container of the proprietary polishing compound they recommended for the alloy. The confirmation email said it would ship in 2 business days. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark living room until the sky started turning gray outside my window. The package arrived on Wednesday. I carried it into my studio and opened it on my bench like I was diffusing something that might explode. The wire was silver gray with a faint blue undertone. It felt lighter than sterling, almost hollow, but when I bent a test piece, it had more resistance than I expected. The metal had a springiness to it, a tension that pushed back against my pliers. I cut a 6-inch length and set up my torch. The annealing instructions said to heat it to a dull red glow and quench immediately. I lit the torch and held the flame over the wire, watching the color shift from gray to a faint orange to red. I dropped it into my quench bowl and the water hissed and steamed. I picked up the wire with my tweezers and bent it with my fingers. It moved like butter. I spent the next 4 hours testing every gauge and thickness they'd sent me. I annealed samples at different temperatures. I bent them, hammered them, twisted them, and tried to break them. The alloy responded to every technique I threw at it. It was easier to work than sterling, stronger than copper, and it didn't fight me the way nickel silver had. I made a simple cuff using the same construction method I'd used for my Eclipse series. 3 overlapping bands, each one textured with a chasing hammer and polished to a high shine. The finished piece weighed half what a sterling version would have weighed. The color was slightly cooler than silver, more platinum than white gold. The surface held the polish so well it looked wet. I wore it for 2 days straight. I washed dishes with it on. I slept in it. I wore it in the shower. It didn't tarnish. It didn't leave any marks on my skin. It didn't bend or warp or show any signs of wear. On Friday, I sat down and ran the numbers. Material cost per cuff at the new alloy prices, $4.18. Material cost per cuff at Cascade's old sterling prices, $11.20. Material cost per cuff at the new jewelry supplier prices, $17.40. I could sell the cuffs at my old price of $35 and make a profit of $22 per piece instead of $15. Or I could drop the price to $30 and still make more per sale than I ever had with sterling. I opened my Etsy dashboard and stared at my closed shop page. Then I opened my product photos folder and looked at the images I'd been using for the past 2 years. The lighting was flat, the backgrounds were cluttered, the pieces looked fine, but they didn't look special. I spent the weekend building a photography setup in the corner of my studio. I bought a used ring light and a roll of seamless white paper. I watched 17 tutorial videos on product photography and lighting angles. I made 20 new pieces over the next 3 weeks. I worked 16-hour days. stopping only to eat and sleep, and occasionally check my bank account to make sure I could still pay rent. I redesigned my entire product line around the new alloy. I tested finish combinations I'd never tried before. Brushed textures, mirror polishes, matte surfaces that caught light differently than anything I'd made with sterling. I photographed each piece on the white backdrop with the ring light positioned at 45 degrees. I edited the photos until the metal looked exactly the way it did in person, cool and luminous and impossibly clean. I wrote new product descriptions. I didn't mention the alloy by name. I just said the pieces were made from a hypoallergenic, tarnish-resistant metal that was lighter and more durable than traditional materials. I listed the benefits. No polishing required, safe for sensitive skin, strong enough for daily wear. I priced everything $2 to $5 below my old rates. On a Tuesday morning in late September, I marked all 20 listings as active and reopened my shop. The first sale came in within an hour. It was from Grace Whitfield, the customer who'd emailed me about Iris copying my designs. She bought one of the new cuffs and left a note that said, "So glad you're back. Can't wait to see this in person." The second sale came 3 hours later, then 2 more that evening. By the end of the week, I'd sold 14 pieces. The reviews started appearing on day 6. "This is the most comfortable cuff I've ever owned. It's so light I forget I'm wearing it, and the finish is flawless. I've been wearing it nonstop for 3 days and it still looks brand new. I have metal allergies and I was nervous to try this, but it's been perfect. No irritation, no discoloration, nothing. I'm ordering 2 more as gifts. The quality is incredible for the price. I've bought sterling pieces that cost twice as much and didn't hold up half as well. This is my new go-to shop." Every review included photos. Customers wearing the pieces in their daily lives, showing how the metal caught light, how it looked after days or weeks of wear. My shop ranking started climbing. Etsy's algorithm noticed the sudden burst of sales and 5-star reviews. My listings started appearing higher in search results. I got my first front page feature in the Trending Now section. Orders kept coming in. 10 the second week, 18 the third week, 23 the fourth week. I checked my profit margins every morning. I was making more per piece than I'd ever made with sterling, and my material costs were so low I could restock without waiting for orders to clear. I placed a bulk order with Meridian Industrial Alloys and got a volume discount that dropped my per unit cost even further. I opened the Maker Forum one night and saw a thread asking for shop recommendations in the handmade jewelry category. 3 people had mentioned my shop. One of them said, "Ember and Thread just reopened with a new collection, and the quality is unreal. I don't know what she's doing differently, but these pieces are next level." I scrolled down and saw Iris's shop mentioned once. Someone said, "Moonstone and Wire has some nice stuff, but it's a little pricey for what you get." I closed the forum and went back to work. 2 weeks later, my shop hit the top 10 search results for handmade silver cuff, even though I wasn't using silver anymore. My listings were outranking shops that had been established for years, including Iris's. I checked her shop page. She'd posted 3 new listings in the past month. All of them were variations on designs I'd taught her. Her prices had gone up again. Her review count hadn't moved. I closed the tab and opened my order queue. 32 jobs waiting. Deposits paid. Deadlines I could actually meet. I wasn't fighting to survive anymore. I was winning. I was at my bench wrapping wire for a pair of Constellation ear climbers when someone knocked on my studio door. It was a Saturday afternoon in late November, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked up and saw Iris through the window. She was wearing a new coat, camel-colored wool, the kind that cost $300 minimum. Her hair was styled differently, pulled back in a way that made her look older and more polished. She smiled and waved when she saw me looking. I set down my pliers and opened the door. "Hey," she said brightly. "I hope it's okay that I just showed up. I was in the neighborhood and I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. I've been meaning to check in." "I'm fine," I said. "That's so good to hear." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and looked around the studio. Her gaze moved across my workbench, my photography set up in the corner, the shelves where I kept my materials organized in labeled containers. "Wow, you've really upgraded your space. It looks so professional now." "Thanks." She picked up one of the finished cuffs from my completed orders pile and turned it over in her hands. "This is gorgeous. Is this the new collection everyone's been talking about?" "Part of it." She examined the metal closely, tilting it under the light. "It's so shiny. What kind of finish is this?" "Just polished." "No, I mean, what are you using to keep it this bright? I've been experimenting with different sealants, but nothing holds up like this." "It doesn't need sealant." She looked at me. "Seriously? What's your secret?" I took the cuff from her hand and set it back on the pile. "I changed suppliers." "Oh." She set her purse down on the stool by my bench and leaned against the table like she was settling in for a long conversation. "That's great. I'm so glad you found someone who works for you. It's been such a journey for both of us, hasn't it? I've actually raised my prices twice since we last talked. My customer base has really matured, and I realized I was undervaluing my work. I'm charging 70% more than I was 6 months ago, and people are still buying. It's amazing what happens when you finally understand your worth as an artist." "That's good for you." "It really is. I mean, I was so scared to make that jump, but my mentor kept telling me that premium pricing attracts premium customers. And she was right. The people who buy from me now aren't looking for bargains. They want quality, and they're willing to invest in it." She picked up one of my wire spools and examined the label. "Who's your new supplier? Maybe I should check them out for backup options." "It's a company I found on my own." "Cool, what's it called?" "I'd rather keep that separate." Her smile tightened. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not sharing my supplier contacts right now. I'm trying to keep my business systems independent." She stared at me. "Are you serious?" "You told me that successful business owners keep their operations separate," I said. "You said mixing resources creates liability and confusion. That's not the same thing." "It sounds pretty similar." Her face flushed. "I was trying to protect our friendship when I set that boundary. You were putting me in an uncomfortable position by asking me to cover your supply problems. That's completely different from me asking for a supplier name." "How is it different?" "Because I wasn't asking you to solve my problems for me. I was just asking for information. That's what friends do. They share resources and support each other's growth." I looked at her standing in my studio, wearing her expensive coat, holding my materials like she had a right to them. "I don't think we're friends anymore," I said. She set the wire spool down hard enough that it bounced. You know what? I came here to check on you because I was worried. I've been telling people you were going through a rough patch and you just needed time to find your footing. I've been defending you when people said you couldn't handle the business side of metalwork. And this is how you treat me? I didn't ask you to defend me. No, you just expect me to hand you everything I've worked for while you sit here acting like I owe you something. Her voice was getting louder. I built my shop into what it is now. I learned those techniques. I found that supplier. I did the work. I found your supplier. I taught you those techniques. You did that work with my help, and I'm grateful for that. But at some point, you need to let go of the idea that you're entitled to credit for my success. I've grown past being your student. I'm my own artist now, and if you can't handle that, that's your problem. She grabbed her purse and walked to the door. Then she stopped and turned back. You know what your real problem is? You're so busy trying to prove you're better than me that you can't see how bitter you've become. You used to be generous and supportive, and now you're just petty. It's honestly sad to watch. She left before I could answer. I stood in the middle of my studio listening to her car start and pull away. Then I sat down at my bench and picked up the ear climbers I'd been working on. My hands were shaking, but I kept wrapping wire until they weren't. The first message appeared in the Maker Forum 3 days later. Iris had posted a long reflection about toxic friendships and the importance of cutting out people who couldn't celebrate your success. She didn't mention my name, but she didn't have to. She described a former friend who'd become resentful and competitive, someone who couldn't handle watching her thrive. 6 people commented with supportive messages. 2 of them were people I knew. One of them was Colin Brennan. I closed the forum and went back to work. The messages kept coming over the next 2 weeks. Private notes from acquaintances asking if I was okay, if something had happened between me and Iris, if I needed to talk. I answered each one the same way. I said we'd grown apart professionally, and I wished her well. None of them asked for details. Most of them said they understood. One person, a ceramicist named Fiona who'd shared a booth with us at a summer market, wrote back with a longer message. I don't know what happened between you two, but I wanted you to know that your new work is incredible. I bought one of your cuffs last week, and I've been wearing it nonstop. I also wanted to mention that I've noticed Iris's designs looking a lot like your old pieces, the layered cuffs, the ear climbers, even that pendant style you used to make. I wasn't sure if you two were collaborating or if something else was going on, but I thought you should know people are noticing. I read it twice and didn't respond. I checked Iris's shop page that night. She hadn't posted any new listings in 3 weeks. Her last update was a short note saying she was taking time to refine her artistic vision and develop new techniques. Her review count hadn't changed. Her sales rank had dropped. I checked again a week later. Still no new listings. Her featured items were all designs I'd taught her, priced higher than anything else in her category. I looked at my own shop page. I was ranked 7th in the handmade jewelry category. I had 43 5-star reviews from the past 2 months. My order queue was full through the end of January. I went back to Iris's page and scrolled through her older listings. The pieces looked tired now, like they were trying too hard to seem important. The descriptions read like someone who was performing confidence instead of feeling it. I closed the tab and tried to go to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the morning she'd shown up at my studio, the way she touched my materials like they were hers to examine, the way she talked about her prices and her growth and her mentor while standing in the space I'd rebuilt from nothing. I thought about the months I'd spent teaching her how to solder, the orders I'd finished for her, the supplier contact I'd handed her because I wanted her to succeed. I thought about the email she'd sent when I'd asked for help, the one that said mixing finances would complicate her bookkeeping, the one that said I needed to build my own systems. I opened my laptop and checked her shop page again. No new listings, no new reviews. Her sales rank had dropped 2 more spots. I checked the Maker Forum. She'd posted another vague message about betrayal and people who smile to your face while undermining you behind your back. 3 people had commented. One of them said they were sorry she was going through this. Another said they'd been through something similar and it got better with time. No one asked what happened. No one defended her. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. I'd won. My shop was thriving. My materials were better and cheaper than anything she had access to. My designs were getting attention while hers looked like copies of work I'd moved past. I had everything I'd needed when I'd asked her for help, and I'd gotten it without her. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated, proven right. Instead, I felt hollow. I opened my phone and scrolled to our old message thread. The last message was the one she'd sent in June, the one about keeping our shops separate and protecting our friendship. I scrolled up through years of conversations, late-night brainstorming sessions about design ideas, photos of pieces we were proud of, jokes and encouragement, and the kind of shorthand you only develop with someone who's been there from the beginning. I scrolled all the way to the top, to the first message we'd ever sent when we were both just starting out and everything felt possible. I'm so glad we're doing this together, she'd written. I don't think I could do it alone. You're not alone, I'd written back. We've got this. I set my phone down and looked at my studio. The clean workspace, the organized materials, the finished pieces waiting to ship, the order queue that kept growing. I'd built all of this by myself. I'd figured out the new alloy, the new techniques, the new pricing strategy. I'd rebuilt my business from nothing, while she'd kept running hers on the foundation I'd helped her build. I'd proven I didn't need her, but I couldn't stop checking her shop page. I couldn't stop reading her vague posts about betrayal. I couldn't stop running the numbers in my head, her stagnant sales versus my climbing rank, her inflated prices versus my efficient margins, her copied designs versus my evolving work. I'd won, but I couldn't let go of keeping score. I closed my phone and went back to my bench. I had 30 orders to finish before the holidays. I had customers waiting. I had a business that was finally stable and profitable and completely mine. I picked up my pliers and got back to work. The studio was quiet except for the sound of wire bending and the occasional hiss of my torch. I worked until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped, and I didn't check her shop page again that night, but I knew I would tomorrow.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.